All right, welcome back to another episode of Blown Coverage. I'm Mike Bell with my co-host Caleb Schwaryer. Caleb, we've got a lot of big games to get to, some big storylines to delve into, and I almost don't even know where to start. I think you agree with me. This seemed like the best college football weekend of the year so far. These games are carrying more and more weight to them week by week now. And yeah, this was definitely my favorite week of the season so far. What say you?
I would agree. I think this is by far the best week of college football, and it's a bittersweet week, really, because this marks the week of, or we're halfway through the season now, and it just feels like it started yesterday, to be honest, which really sucks. But it was a great week. Look forward to next week, and this is when football really starts to matter here pretty soon. So overall, exciting.
Agreed, agreed. Yeah, we are halfway through the season and we're already starting to get into coaches getting fired. And I think that's probably the big storyline of the week and of the day right now. And that is James Franklin has been fired after starting the season 3-3. A shocker last week when they lost to UCLA, but an even bigger shocker this week losing to Northwestern. They decided the time was now, and it's shocking to see him be fired, and at the same time, not so shocking, I guess. A lot of people kind of thought, okay, you're kind of reaching that point. He was there for 12 years. What are your thoughts on it?
I mean, I guess I would probably have the same stance on it as you for the most part. I think to some degree it is shocking. And I think in our last episode, we were talking about how Penn State, yes, it's like a really good job, but at the same time, I think it's a little bit more difficult as far as a competition um, aspect. Like, yes, you can get some pretty good recruits still, but I think, like, basically, especially now that Oregon and Penn State are in there, or I mean, not Penn State. I'm so sorry. USC and UCLA.
UCLA, yeah,
Oregon. Yeah, sorry. Those teams are in the Big Ten now.
Washington.
I think yes, Washington too. I think it's just going to make it harder for teams that, aside from like maybe you could say Michigan or Ohio State, like the really big teams. I think it's going to make it a little bit harder for them to be able to attract attention because. I mean, honestly, like, would you rather go to Oregon or would you rather go to Penn State? Probably what it will boil down to is what's closer for you and your family. Um, but James Franklin, he did a great job as far as getting the. It was almost kind of like a rising phoenix type of thing, where he helped Penn State literally come out of the ashes. I know Bill O'Brien kind of helped there for about 2 years before James Franklin took over and did a good job there. But James Franklin really excelled the program. It's just, and we talked about this like last week. It's just he's been there for 12 years, and I would probably say I don't know off the top of my head, but I'd maybe say 8 years of that. They're at least a 10-win team, but that's it. They haven't necessarily taken the next step. So I can honestly, I hate that for James Franklin, him to go out this way, just because I think he deserves better. I think he's a really good coach, but I guess I can see it from the boosters or whatever perspective, of them firing him because it's like, man, you have all this talent, and they probably were overhyped to some extent, but you're 3-3 now, and you are preseason ranked number two. Which I'm not saying I'm not going to put too much stock into them being preseason number two because nobody knows. But um, I don't know. It sucks, but been very consistent. Above 10 games, he'll get you there, but not much further. So I get it to an extent.
Yeah, I agree. I think the time was now to do this. You had just said that, he had had multiple 10-win seasons, and not to take away, because at the end of the day, he did have those seasons, but the Big Ten now wasn't what it was when he
Oh yeah,
had
for
those
sure.
10-win seasons. And look, should you expect perfection out of coaches? No, like, especially depending on the program. Like, I think there is, especially now, going to be more and more variance in the win-loss column. The thing is with him is if you couldn't get it done this year, I mean, I don't know when you're gonna get it done. You've kind of had opportunity after opportunity. This did seem to be their year, and he still wasn't fired for losing to Oregon. That's not what got him fired. What got him fired is like, "Look, man, this is
The
going off
effort.
the rails. Now you've lost to 2 very bad," I mean, Northwestern has a winning record, but
Yeah,
they shouldn't be
Northwestern's
on Penn
poor too.
State's yeah, they
Yeah.
shouldn't be on Penn State's level. Um, I think it's possible to still think James Franklin is a top 15 coach in the nation and still agree with him being let go and just say, "Hey, man, this isn't the fit. This isn't going to work right now." And he does deserve a ton of credit because at the end of the day, his 2 jobs have been Vanderbilt, where he did a good job,
Yeah.
and Penn State, where he did a good job.
I
If
think they I
I'm
think he went 9-4 when he was at Vanderbilt, if I'm not mistaken.
I
I
believe
could be
so,
wrong,
I
but
believe
I
so,
mean,
and
that's a big deal for Vanderbilt too, before NIL and everything.
right. So it's like one of those situations for him where if a big program needs a coach that has even better resources than Penn State, I wouldn't be afraid of James Franklin. I would say, okay, yeah, I think he could do a good job. It
Oh,
just
yeah, for
wasn't
sure.
working at Penn State for whatever reason. I am curious to see what comes next for him and what comes next for Penn State. I don't know who they're going to hire, who's going to be available because more jobs are going to open up. It looks like Florida may open up. They may not get a big name, Penn State, but they just got to find like the right guy, the right fit, and just be prepared that it was a risk to do this because grass isn't greener on the other side, necessarily.
Oftentimes, yeah.
Right. But
Especially like we both said, or like you said, I would probably agree with that. The top 15 coach in the nation. It's going to be hard to find another coach ahead of him that'd be willing to leave their school, which they probably already have built up to some extent.
Mhm.
Well, that they're not comfortable, but they're getting their things done. Who's to say they would want to even leave? So it is a huge risk.
Here's the
Some names,
question.
yeah,
Well,
go ahead.
here's the question for you. Let's say Sark leaves Texas for whatever reason. Would you be okay with James Franklin being the next head coach? How would you feel about that?
I think James Franklin would be a downgrade to what Sark has shown me up to this point because Sark is, gosh, 2021, so he's been here. Guess this is maybe his fifth season. Excuse me. Um, and I know basically Sark has done more in less time than what James Franklin has done. Has Sark gotten us to a championship? No, but one year it was one like literally just one play away on the cusp of going to the championship, which more than likely would have lost to Michigan. And then the second game at what was it? Was it 28-14 or something? Ohio State last year. But I think Ohio State was just destined last year. So I would not be happy with that because I think a big thing was they're two different coaches. I think, and I think Sarkeesian's like a program coach as well. I think he's done a great job. You have to be when you're at Texas because you got to manage the team, the boosters, everything. Sark is like very offensively minded, and that's what James Franklin has lacked on his teams. He's had great defenses almost every single year, and what limits them, either their quarterback play or wide receiver play, whatever the case may be. It's on offense. So it'll just be a different team direction. What
Yeah,
about
I
you?
don't know.
Because
I I
they're
think I think I could I think I could debate you on that. I don't know if Sark has done more with less. I would argue James Franklin has probably done more with less. You got to think Texas has more resources.
no
You
less
just said,
time. Less time. I think
yeah.
James Franklin has less resource. Or yes, James Franklin has less resources. I'm just saying as time frame goes. Has James Franklin been like one play away from a championship?
I mean, wasn't he last year? Didn't they nearly uh, win that game against who was it against in the playoffs? They were very close.
I know that they beat Boise State, and I forgot who they played after that. Let me actually look real quick.
I guess while you're looking at that, my argument would be one of the biggest criticisms of Sark is that he hasn't won. He struggles to win the big games.
Yeah.
So that's the same thing with James Franklin. Like, I think it is kind of comparable. And my point is, I'm not even saying that James Franklin is a better coach than Sark. I am just saying if Sark had to go for whatever reason, and then you hire James Franklin, what would you think? Because to me, I think it's comparable. And being that it's comparable, I'm just making the point that James Franklin can get like a really good job and be expected to perform at a high level. Like, I'd be curious to see what he could do with like major resources, you know?
Yeah. I, would it be a huge dip between Sark and James Franklin for me? I don't think so. I would just prefer Sark because I really respect what he's done for Texas. Just
Okay. Well,
fun.
very well. Enjoy it because he's only going to be there for like 2 more years. But um, let's move on
Well,
to
you don't
the
know.
into the games themselves. Stacked weekend. Expect. Go ahead.
Um, Penn State actually almost it was so the Notre Dame Penn State game last year it was 27-24, I believe. So they actually took Notre Dame basically to the end. So okay, fine. Sark
They
and
they've they've been close. They've been close. But
that
regardless,
might have been their closest. If I'm not mistaken, might have been the closest.
yeah. No, for sure it was the closest for sure. It just felt like last point on this, it just felt like the program was exhausted. Like they're like, okay, you know what? We've squeezed this sponge as much as we can, and like
Was
it's just we're done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I can't blame them on that. I mean, one of my criticisms is whenever a huge university, and Penn State, I would consider a huge university, whenever these guys hire a coach, they don't give them enough time. Like, for instance, I
Yeah,
don't want to go like into this too in depth, but the situation with Bill Belichick at North Carolina, there's already like rumors of him getting fired like right now. I think is a little preposterous. I think, and I saw an article saying how parents think that the culture there is toxic. And I would say, okay, if it's truly toxic and it's like not necessarily a good environment for the players and stuff like that, okay, fine. Maybe you can have an argument to fire a coach. Okay. I won't necessarily say like, doubt or uh, challenge them on that. But as long as that stuff's fine and just have a realistic expectation and be patient and allow the coaches to kind of do their thing and get stuff incorporated because it takes time. Some Texas was the same way for a couple, for a hot minute actually before we got Sark. It just felt like coaches that we had only had 1 to 2 years and boom, on to the next. Kind of
yeah.
unfair, really, truly.
No, I agree. I think coaches have got to be given more time. Letting them go in their first year, you just can't do it. They actually in the NFL, I don't know if you saw, but they fired Brian Callahan. I think is his name. The Tennessee
Oh
Titans
yeah,
head coach.
yes, for the Titans, yes.
Yeah. It's
Rookie
just like
quarterback.
the Titans looked horrible. Don't get me wrong, but it's just like I
Who
don't
do they have
know.
though? That's the thing. Like, I know they have Cam Ward and Cam Ward. Maybe Justin Simmons. I think that's the defensive tackle or something they have. That's all I can think of off the top of my head from the team. So it's not
Yeah.
like what do you expect? What do you expect a coach to do when he has no players?
Right,
Really?
right. No, agreed. Okay, let's get into these games because we have a lot to talk about. This was a stacked slate, especially the 2:30 games. I'm actually curious to know from you because I know you were watching the Texas OU game, how much of these you were able to really watch. Um, because it wasn't just that there was another game on. It's
Yeah.
that, I have my setup where I have the main screen and then 4 side screens, but even that I could have put more games in. How were you able to catch up on these games, or what was your viewing experience like?
Well, I mean, we were talking about the games a little bit during the OU game. So that, and then also towards the end, whenever Texas had kind of sealed the game, I kind of started looking at the Indiana and Oregon game on my phone and started kind of watching that. Other than that, I mean, I think most people would say like if your team's playing in a huge rivalry like that, especially it was. I know the score was like 23-6, but God, I was like, OU's going to pull this out somehow. I was not turning that off the TV, and I have to. There's something about having it just that game. I don't know right now. Now,
Right,
if the Texas isn't on, then yes, I can deal with the four people or four games. But
right.
um,
Yeah.
anyway, I know it was rather problematic actually. Like it should be a crime to have that many good games on at the same time. Honestly,
Yeah, well, it was
mostly
very exciting.
left too. Honestly, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was a great weekend. I think the first game we should get into first is Indiana, Oregon.
Hmm.
That's where game day was, and Indiana now sitting 6-0, walking into Oregon, who hadn't lost in 18 straight games. I didn't think Indiana just survived. I thought they dominated really
Oh
the
yeah,
entire game, even whenever the score appeared to be close. And look, not domination in the same way that Indiana dominated Illinois, obviously, but this wasn't like a fluky win situation where there was some weird turnovers or something like that. It just felt like from start to finish, Indiana won in all 3 phases of the game. They were better in all 3 phases, and that was so impressive to see versus an Oregon team that I still think is a great team.
oh yeah.
Um, this is Indiana's first win over a top 5 team since beating Purdue in 1967. So you gotta be excited if you're an Indiana fan. Yeah, what were your thoughts on this game?
I also think it's their first time being ranked top three ever in program history, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that. I thought it was a great game too. Just kind of looking at the highlights and stuff afterwards, of course, because like I said just a second ago, I was focused on the OU Texas game, and I think I should have some slack on that with it being one of the best games of the year, or one of the best rivalries. But man, I we're both pretty high on Oregon, and I still am. You know, it's just man, it is interesting what Kurt Signetti is doing at Indiana. Because out of the two, who would you think has the more NIL opportunities, and who do you think has the better athletes? Probably, and 9 out of 10 people would probably say Oregon. Which, like you said, Indiana. Which defense do you think would have performed better? Probably Oregon, because that's what Dan Lanning has his hat like. That's what he pins his hat on all the time is the defense or whatever. Well, Indiana's defense had 2 interceptions and 6 sacks on Dante Moore. Okay, so he wasn't having all the time. They were pretty physical. And last episode, we were talking about the connection between Mendoza and Surratt, and that showed up. I mean, he had 8 receptions, 121 yards, 1 touchdown. And Mendoza, yes, he did have 1 interception, but I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say like it's a freebie, but Oregon's defense is really good too. So it's like, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, it kind of offsets. I don't want to necessarily like give him slack on that. But man, I don't know. It's just interesting to see. Like, I'm really curious how far Indiana can go. And because up to this point, man, it's like some teams have shown up really great one week and sometimes they don't the next week. And I'm not necessarily saying that's what I expect from Indiana because, like you said, they just came out straight out of the gate and dominated Illinois, which I know we'll talk about the Ohio State Illinois game at some point. But I don't think Illinois is a bad team either. Um, I think it's pretty impressive. I really do. And I'm excited to see kind of where the Big Ten goes by the time for the conference championship.
That's gonna be interesting because, right now it seems like Ohio State's firing on all cylinders. They're kind of a tough team to beat, but you could have said the same thing about Oregon. Everyone was kinda riding in Oregon for the Big Ten, title game, and that would be an interesting game, but I gotta tell you, Indiana versus Ohio State. I mean, Indiana, look, I think you put them right up there with the Ohio States, Miamis, and well, now Indiana's because they're top 3 team in the country, and they're legit. I mean, I don't know how they put it all together, but
Well,
what
honestly, man, just looking at their schedule right now, I mean, as long as they don't have any hiccups, man, they're probably going to be undefeated. I think the at Penn State game can be a trap game,
for
uh,
sure.
but potentially, Drew Aller being out.
Yeah.
I don't even know who Penn State's backup quarterback is, but I mean, it's interesting. But Indiana could be undefeated by the end of the year because they do not play Ohio State in their
Right.
schedule.
Right. Yeah, so it's gonna be an interesting team to watch. I'm curious to see what Oregon does from here. I mean, they look, both these teams are elite. You expect them to win out, but you never know what's gonna happen. Look, Mendoza right now, he's in my top 2 for Heisman. He's just been so good. He did make a critical mistake there kinda towards the end of the game, that pick 6 that he threw, which is really the only major mistake by Indiana all game, and when I was watching it, I was like, that really sucks because Indiana has been really dominating here, and then now you've just let Oregon back in the game, and what did Indiana proceed to do? Just score 10 points and not allow the Oregon offense to score again after that. The Ducks had averaged 40 plus points coming in, just 20 on Saturday. And again, 7 of those were off the pick six. Oregon's defense, I
Yep.
mean, still
Yeah.
very legit, but also, quick note, you mentioned it. They had 6 sacks, Indiana did, and Oregon had only allowed 1 all season before that. So, both sides of the ball, Indiana is just super impressive, and I'm excited to watch them going forward. They're obviously gonna get national attention, and rightfully so. I can't wait for their next big game, and I'm very curious to see what they can do in a playoff run. So, yeah, it's
Oh
been great to watch.
yeah, I would agree with that. Um, I think it's pretty impressive too that their defense was able to do that against a really good offense. I mean, they've got some really good pieces on the offense, and for Indiana to have done that, man, if they show up like that like every game, which at this point we don't really have a reason to expect them not to. In all fairness, I mean, every college team kind of has like an off week or not an off week, but it's just kind of like that down week, I guess you could say, for whatever reason. It's kind of weird. Kind of like briefly mentioning this Ole Miss, Washington State this weekend, which thankfully, not thankfully, but Ole Miss was able to pull it out. But and I don't really think much of it just because most teams kind of just have an off week like that randomly for whatever reason. Um, yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, last point just on Oregon. We've seen some teams not respond well after a loss, and I guess I'm mostly referring to Penn State. Penn State was a little bit of a different situation, but
Yeah,
this week, Oregon goes to Rutgers, and Rutgers has played pretty well actually this season.
they're always
So
one of
you
those sneaky teams too in the Big Ten.
yeah, well,
With
they
their
nearly
record
beat
horrible.
Nebraska.
Yeah,
They nearly beat Nebraska last week, and not that Nebraska's a powerhouse, but they're a good team, and they're gonna be at home, Rutgers are, and Oregon could just be thinking, like, coming off a big game, those emotional roller coasters, if Rutgers comes out swinging, I mean, watch out for Oregon to be on upset alert. I'm not saying it's gonna happen. I don't think it will. I think Oregon has a good enough coaching staff and team that expects to win, but I'm just saying watch out for that game.
yeah, yeah. For sure. And really, their next three games: Rutgers, Wisconsin, Iowa. Really, all of those apply. I would probably say Iowa the out of those three the most, just because Iowa. Yes, I know they punt and play defense, but for whatever reason, man, it's like every other year Iowa just upsets like a top tier team that surprises people. However, it probably shouldn't. So I think what it'll boil down to is okay, has it been like 700 or 820 days since we last upset somebody? And if it's right around that ballpark for them, it'll happen. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I think the Big Ten will be I think I'd have to sit here and think about it a little bit longer, but it's either 1A or 1B as far as the best conference. So anyway, it'll be. It'll be interesting. I think the other big, I think a next big game that we could talk about would probably just no bias, but just I'll just say it: Texas OU. Let's get into it. What were your thoughts on it?
Well, I was actually hoping you would open with OU Texas because I'm sure you have a
Oh,
lot to say about the Texas side. But since you've put me on the spot, um, you know, it was a good game. I mean, it depends on what you mean by good game. It wasn't necessarily the most pleasing game to watch because you have two offenses that were struggling. Um, I know you're going to cover a lot of the Texas angle, so I want to maybe cover a little bit more of the OU angle. And I just think for OU, we talked about in the last episode how this was kind of a must-win game for them. And I think it was. I think OU could be done. I think they're looking down the barrel of like an 8-4 season, maybe at best, because they've got 5 top 15 matchups remaining. It's the nation's toughest schedule remaining. Mateer, look, just getting back from surgery, I get it. Did that factor in? Sure. But what else did we talk about before this game is the turnover battle. And that is what made the difference is the 3 turnovers by OU. And particularly, I thought the one that changed the game because OU was kind of moving the ball well in the first half. Like they were moving the ball decent. They weren't able to finish, but they were moving the ball. And at the end of the half, that interception by
oh yeah, in the
Mateer,
end zone. Yeah,
yeah, that changed
so did
everything
Auburn,
because
honestly,
yeah, it just
because they
it
were
was
like maybe 15 yards out of field goal range, and in those types of games, like I forgot who it was, maybe Joel Klatt or Josh Pate. Um, 3 points is like 7 points in those games, and truly in that game, it really was. And you can maybe even argue 8 points or something. I don't know, but 3 points is a lot. Go ahead.
yeah, well, so Sark called it, a momentum changing play, and it was because second half, Texas kind of found their rhythm, and again, OU turned the ball over. OU on defense actually played decent in terms of like getting after Arch, but then again, the Texas offense started to find just enough of a rhythm, and those turnovers are eventually just going to get to you.
Especially in one
Um,
of those games where it's just no matter the players, the stars, whatever, just a lot of emotions. Turnovers are a huge part.
Yeah, and the second half yardage for Texas was very good. It really was a tale of two halves.
Oh, for
So,
sure.
big picture, this puts Texas back in the playoff conversation. 2 losses. Can you get in with 3? I think eventually there will be a 3-loss team. But I did notice Texas, they're starting to find a little bit of a rhythm. I'm not here to say that Texas is they're just fully back and they're this elite team. No, because I watched the game and I saw that offensively they're still struggling, but they're making progress. Defensively, returning to form a little bit. For OU, I kind of think they're done. Unless they just go on some magical run. Their offense, just like Texas, has issues. Everyone's been talking about Mateer, Heisman candidate. He's been good. Um, but overall, that offense has not been elite by any stretch of the imagination. And who knows when Mateer is going to be 100% healthy. So, yeah, I thought this was big. And yeah, I'm very curious to see what these two teams do moving forward. But that's really all the thoughts I have on the game.
So, my question was, and I, talked about that with my dad for a little bit, just kind of towards the end of the game. What are your thoughts on Brent Venables allowing John Mateer to play that game? 17 days post op, and he's got 3 rods in his throwing thumb. Just what are your thoughts on that? I guess just like, would you have done that, or would you have sat him? Or and I know it's a little bit easier to kind of say this like answer now that we know the result, but just what are your thoughts before I kind of go into that a little bit more?
If he was cleared to play, obviously he was cleared to play. But
Yeah.
if the doctor said, look, he's fine, then I don't have a problem with it because I don't think that other guy was gonna give you a chance to win. I don't even know his
Yeah,
name, but
Hawkins. Yeah.
yeah, but versus Kent State, he actually wasn't that good. He was uh, didn't look comfortable throwing the ball. I know that's not his game. And again, I said all week, this was a must-win game for OU. They
Hmm.
needed to win this game. So I don't have a problem with it.
I'm not gonna like sit there like I think excuse me. I give our defense the credit for the victory. I'm not gonna sit here and call Mateer just like, oh, okay, he sucks so bad because of his hand. I'm not gonna sit here and say that. But we both know how that schedule is going to go, and I agree with you. I think it was a must win this game for Oklahoma just because of their upcoming schedule is just so brutal. I almost thought like, okay, would it almost benefit OU for them to sit Mateer this game and to allow him to rest a little bit and then come back? Now, some people are saying that combination of the surgery and then him being out. I think he's been out for 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, which is a big thing. You got that's a hard game to go back into. Plus, keep in mind it's his first Red River game too, which it is just another kind of atmosphere. It's just a different atmosphere. It's hard for any player, regardless what year you are. Um, that's an aspect of it. I don't know. Like, would I have wanted my quarterback to maybe heal up a little bit better? I don't know. I don't know because yeah, I don't know. I think it's a good I think it's like a good question, and I think ultimately, obviously, he was cleared to play. Otherwise, Brent Venables wouldn't have allowed him to play. And Hawkins, yes, if they played Hawkins, it would have been a definite like, okay, we're going to win this, no problem, or whatever kind of thing. But at least your quarterback would have maybe gotten a little bit more rested and need to double check and see who OU plays this upcoming week. But um,
At South Carolina.
yeah, which that can be a little tricky game too, for sure. So, but okay, overall, I agree with your points on the Texas aspect of it. So I think this game, number one, was huge for the rivalry, right? You want to have the bragging rights. Number two, I think mentally this was a huge victory for us because really and truly we had a gut punch last week and we're up against a wall and we came out like you said, we found some rhythm. Our defense is back in shape. And on offense, I'm not going to sit here and say, "Oh crap, man! We're back. We're back, man." We're not, but we've made really good progress against arguably the best defense in the country. Some people have it two, some people have it one. And we ran the ball on them, which is not easy to do at all. And so I was very impressed by that because for the last several weeks, and regarding to the Florida game too, people have been criticizing the offensive line, and rightfully so. We only have one true like can't think of the word, one true starter that has been seasoned. Okay, all the rest of them fairly young. Okay, and that's fine. They're pretty good. They're just young. It's a hard defense to go up against. So I was very impressed by that. We were just able to out physical them, like our offensive line, and plus I think our running back gets a lot of kudos. Wisner, he would get hit, just bounce off, and he's like a very small guy. I don't know how much of the game you were able to watch. Wisner has always impressed me. I'm sure you remember him from the A&M game last year a little bit. I know you watched that one, but he's just a kind of a slender belt running back, but he is just, I don't know how to describe it. He just gets off of tackles. He's a thumper. But man, you could tell by the end of the game he was getting pretty sore because people are having to pick him up and whatnot. I thought Arch had a great game. So 21 to 26, 169. I know that there's much to be desired there as far as the passing yards go, but he made it happen when it counted. One touchdown, zero interceptions. Did just enough to keep the ball going. And that's frankly, as long as we have a good running game, that's all we need him to do. Just not turn over the ball, keep it rolling. Our defense, like you mentioned, we had three interceptions. John Mechir couldn't have a like a clean pocket very long. I did not realize how one dimensional Oklahoma really is. They have not been able to run the ball really all that much, and they had. Think about this. We talked about this last week or whatever. Marcel Reed, Mike Elko not wanting to run him just because of his thin frame and him not wanting him to get hurt, right? Well, OU is having to run Mateer 17 days post surgery just to have some sort of run game,
Mhm.
which that's pretty crazy. Now, I think the Texas defense is pretty good and great against the run and all that, but they've kind of had this issue the whole year. So anyway, I thought it was a great win for Sark and the program. I'm not going to sit here and say, "Oh yeah, we're back" or whatever, but hey, if we keep playing like this consistently the rest of the year, well, there's a good chance we could be in the SEC championship. We'll see, though. I'm not going to sit here and say it'll be easy. It'll be hard, but we have a chance. The season's not over yet.
Agreed, agreed. Okay, let's move on to the Alabama-Missouri game. This was, one of the funner games to watch.
Mhm.
Was very intriguing all week. Um, so yeah, it was one of the funner games to watch. Kellen DeBoer, now 12-2 in black hoodies. So he's gonna have to keep wearing those. Being that Florida State lost this week, this was even more of kind of a must-win game for Alabama. I think they're kind of exiting must-win territory because I think you can get away with a couple more losses now because I should say like one more loss now before you're back in must-win territory. But with their schedule, you got to win all these that
Yeah.
you can. Um, Credit to Missouri. Missouri made Alabama earn every single inch. And honestly, if Missouri had a better quarterback, they might have won this game. Not that he was just horrible or that he's a horrible quarterback, but he made a lot of mistakes. And quite frankly, Missouri as a team made too many mistakes if you're going to win a game like this. Some stupid penalties, really all throughout, but especially in the first quarter when you had some momentum and they just kind of fumbled the bag there. Alabama, look, they faced 3 top 20 teams in 3 weeks, and now they're going to face Tennessee next week, and I know they've got LSU, coming up after that. So, credit to Alabama for doing what they've done. It really makes the Florida State loss just so confusing, but to me, that
Yeah.
shows that as the season goes on, look, all wins and losses should count, but you gotta add just a little bit more weight to the ones in the middle and the end of the season because there's just something about the first couple weeks that
Yeah. Almost
they don't
fluke.
define who you are. They gotta count to some extent, don't get me wrong. But we were talking about Mendoza in the last game. Between Simpson and Mendoza, they're my Heisman favorites right now. 3 touchdowns for Simpson. He threw a dagger there on 4th down, gutsy call there in the 4th quarter, when they were potentially I don't remember if they were in field goal range, I think they were kinda on the edge of it, and they decided to go for it. He throws a dagger of a pass to Daniel Hill late in the game. He has just looked so good. And then to me, one of the storylines they did this last week to Vanderbilt is dominating time of possession. They dominated 38 minutes to 21 minutes. So that's kind of a new style, I guess, for Alabama, and it's been interesting to watch. It was interesting kinda at the end, their style of play, because I felt like they were kind of keeping Missouri in it, but it didn't matter just because they kept the ball so much, Missouri was kinda forced to be perfect. Give credit to Missouri, their pass rush, very good. I was wondering how that was gonna be against, their first I shouldn't say first, but a really quality team like Alabama, their pass rush is legit. To me, if I'm Missouri, I'm sick because you still had a chance to win it there at the end. Bad interception, stupid penalties. I feel bad for them, but give a lot of credit to I think both teams, honestly, to do what they did. Missouri to me, I question like, okay, is this going to be one of those things where we find out Missouri is still Missouri and they're just going to get blown out in this game? But no, it wasn't like that. Uh, they performed very well. I'm curious to see what they do the rest of the season.
Yep.
They've got kind of an interesting schedule.
Yeah, their next three games
Um,
are very interesting. Auburn at Auburn at 6:45
mhm.
next week. Then they play at Vanderbilt, and then versus A&M
Yeah,
at home. But I mean, that's a really tough three-game schedule right there. So by the end of that stretch, man, we'll kind of have them figured out for sure.
agreed, agreed. Just quick talking point. Um, that fake punt that they had in the fourth quarter. How do they not have a better replay angle of that play? Because I think if they had a better replay angle, there was probably a case that he got the first down, and that could have changed, by the way, the entire game. Because they were going to have more time if they would have. Uh, in Alabama wouldn't have got such good field position if they would have got the first down there. But they didn't have the angle. I don't understand how for a big game like that, or really any game, you don't have a camera that's right on the first down line. I don't get that, and that really, like, changed the game. I don't know how close it was because I didn't have the angle, but it looked like he could have got it. Um, so anyway, this was a great game to watch. Uh, Alabama keeps on rolling. You know, Tennessee next week, like I said, they can kind of afford to drop one at some point, not that they should,
Yeah,
but it's a
especially
tough
with their
schedule for
schedule,
them.
depending on who it is.
Right, right. So, anyway, yeah, I thought this was a, great game to watch, and I'm curious to see what both teams do moving forward. So, what do you got in this game?
Yeah, I mean, I won't add too much to it. I think Alabama is just really good, and I guess you could say maybe returning to form. Maybe kind of the so Nick Saban's tenure at Alabama was almost kind of like a tale of two teams. Really good defense, both, but he was like really run heavy and very time of possession focused and just no turnovers on offense, just run you to death kind of thing, and balancing the pass in there and not relying on it. And then he started shifting over like Tua, Jalen Hurts, all that kind of stuff. Kind of started, and then Bryce Young with the pass happy aspect of the offense. I think Kalen DeBoer is kind of like meshing those two together, and like yes, if they need to, they can go pass it, but also they're trying to get back to the run. And like you said, Alabama controlled the game. Miller has had two great weeks. Um, and I want to say somewhere that I read, or that, oh, okay, excuse me, wrong team. But to this point, Missouri's defense has been pretty good. They really have.
Yeah.
Um, and like you said, that pass rush was pretty good as well. And I would still like to give credit to Missouri. Their run game, it was ranked number one going into this game. They still had 163 yards. Three people had over 50 rushing yards, and their quarterback was one of them. And I know his play kind of left a little bit more to be desired. And he had those two picks, which, in these kinds of games, turnovers are huge. I still, think about last year. Missouri was arguably one of the biggest letdown teams in all the SEC last year. They came in with a lot of expectations, and they just pretty much did not live up to any of them. And they had what Burden go to second round or whatever. But anyway, they had some pro talent on the team too. But what their coach Drinkowitz or whatever his name is, I can never pronounce that. Missouri is one of those jobs. I would even maybe argue a little bit of a lesser job than Arkansas typically to compete on that kind of level consistently. He's done that now 3 to 4 years. I think that he's done a pretty good job there. I would say.
Agreed. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the other game that was at noon, and that is Ohio State versus Illinois. So, Um, just want to say real quick, you had mentioned that you think Illinois is a good team earlier. I think we were talking about Indiana. I agree, and this loss uh, bumped them out of the top 25. I don't necessarily agree with that, but they're going to still have opportunities to get back in that. I mean, they're like the
They're
number
5 and
26.
2. They're two losses. to 1-3.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's unfair,
Yeah.
to them, but 34-16 final score, it looked like another day at the office for Ohio State.
Mhm.
I thought this game was a masterclass of how elite teams capitalize on mistakes and how good to not so great squads shoot themselves in the foot, and that was kind of the case here. I mean, if you're Illinois, you kinda had to play, like, a perfect game.
You
And
did.
you didn't do that. You had 3 turnovers. You gave Ohio State short field after short field, and, the offense actually wasn't that bad. I'm not saying that they were great, but they moved the ball decently. They actually outgained Ohio State, which is a little bit deceptive because, again, Ohio State had the short fields. 16 points, the most points Ohio State has allowed. Um, Ohio State, it's hard to tell, like, if that offense is who they are or if they're just kind of on cruise control because they're just better than everybody, I don't know. It
Yeah.
looks like they don't have it completely figured out. I don't think it's a problem, but I just wonder, like, their defense has kind of helped their offense a lot to this point,
Oh,
like
for sure.
giving them short fields and eventually like the other team's defense being on the field for so long, they get tired. So I would be curious to see when and if Ohio State faces like a really good offense this year, what that looks like, because I would like to see Ohio State play from behind. Look, they can probably do it because they've got the talent and their quarterback's only going to get better. I mean, he is a freshman after all, first year. Um, but if I had to nitpick Ohio State, it's that their offense doesn't look elite, but they haven't had to be. They've got the players. I
Yeah.
mean, we know about their receivers. So, um, to me, this reminded me actually a little bit of when I was thinking about pregame, and this maybe isn't even the best example. This is giving Spring Hill too much credit, but I was like, this is kind of Gilmer against Spring Hill here. Like there's only so much Illinois can do. So I think this game went exactly as I thought. If anything, I thought Illinois played a little bit better than I thought. If they don't turn the ball over, then maybe this
Pretty
game
make it
goes a
work.
little bit different, but you can't shoot yourself in the foot. You can't beat yourself versus this kind of team. So that's really all I have to say. Another day at the office for Ohio State. What did you see in this game?
Yeah. I'll piggyback on what you said basically. And like you said, the 3 turnovers, just the mistakes that Illinois gave uh, basically to Ohio State. They only all that happened, right? And yet they only lost to the number one team in the nation by 18 points. Which, yes, I know, 18 points. I don't know how to say it. It's like my expectation was for like if you looked at this game a couple years ago, you would have thought Ohio State would have beaten them like 70-10 or something like that.
Right.
For I think Illinois, despite all their mistakes that they made, it's at least I wouldn't say competitive, but it could have been if they didn't make all the mistakes. But anyway, 5-2 Illinois team. I still think they're a good team. We'll see how they go moving forward. And to answer or to kind of go on to what you were saying about Ohio State and their upcoming schedule, and I do think I would agree with you. It'd be a very interesting game if they like had to play Oregon in the regular season, or somebody that really had a good offense. Because up to this point, uh, not to critique Ohio State necessarily and say that they don't deserve to be number one, but they haven't necessarily had an offense like an opponent with an offense that was like truly elite. I think a great test would either be Indiana or Oregon. And just looking at their upcoming schedule, man, uh, do I think no, I'm not even going to say that. So they have Penn State in a couple weeks, and then Michigan. Okay, they have UCLA, which I don't know. Maybe that new tight
Funny
end
enough,
coach.
that may be their test. And I'm dead serious. UCLA, if
Yeah,
they're still
who
rolling,
knows if they keep
that might
playing like
be
the way
a
they're.
legit offense.
Yeah, who knows? Isn't that kind of funny too? Yeah. Um. Anyway, and I thought Luke Allmeyer, he played. he had an interception, but he still had some pretty good numbers. Illinois now is 12th in the conference, 2-2, um, in arguably the best conference. So probably out of the Big Ten picture. Never say never, but we'll see. Um, really got to give those guys some kudos, though. I think because they are. I think Brett Belema's got that program like turning around, and we can kind of see that and be interested to see where he has them in like 2 to 3 years.
Agreed, and they're gonna have an opportunity to run the table. They've got some interesting games in the sense that, at Washington versus Rutgers and even Maryland, those are teams that can compete with you. Here's the deal, those are winnable games. If they run the table, they're 10-2. Like, they could still get in the playoffs. We don't
Something
know
that we
what
said,
kinda chaos is gonna be before us. So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, especially in the
Um
Big Ten, 10-2. That's really good record.
Right, no, agree. Well, speaking of the Big Ten, one of the big matchups in the Big Ten was Michigan and USC. So we were talking about in the 2:30 window how you were kind of focused on the OU Texas game and could only focus on so many games at a time. For me, the late window was that was the case for me, being that I was watching the A&M game. I was able to watch this game, and as I just kept looking over, I was just like, man, like USC is just handling these guys. So must win game for USC. They pull it off and they do it in dominating fashion. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, on my notes, I have USC out physical Michigan, which Michigan was the seventh ranked rush defense. And USC's running back has 158 rushing yards, one touchdown, and USC's quarterback, who's been playing great all year, honestly, and he's kind of under the radar, I think, for like the Heisman talk, maybe. He has 1,852 passing yards, 13 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So in previous episodes, we've talked about USC, Lincoln Riley never having an issue on offense as far as his tenure goes at USC. The defense is what kind of is the Achilles tendon, so to speak. And I won't sit here and say, man, kudos to USC for keeping Michigan to 13 points, but
They
because number
haven't done
one,
that yet against anybody else. Yeah,
yeah, that's true. I don't know. Maybe they're turning the tide.
could
But
be.
Michigan, what are they about right now? Just hard nose, run game, use Underwood as needed, not put him in a situation where it's completely on his back yet. And he's very talented. I think he's going to be a top tier quarterback in a year or two, however long it takes him. He's going to be a great quarterback. Right now, though, he was put in a situation. It's not good. Just all of it on his back. And anyway, I would say kudos to Lincoln Riley. Very good win. Top 15 win. Need to see who USC is playing against next.
Notre
Uh,
Dame. It's going to be a great game. Yep.
that will be a great game. Oh my goodness! At Notre Dame, 6:30 p.m.
Yep.
Man, that will be and that will be able to tell us a lot about USC. Okay, and who knows? Maybe not saying like, oh, if USC loses to Notre Dame, like, okay, Lincoln Riley sucks, but is there some chatter about what USC should do with Lincoln Riley? He's not been there as long as James Franklin has by any means, but I don't know. It almost seems like there's. I think Lincoln Riley has had more success at Oklahoma than he's had at USC, which is kind of odd. I mean, they're both blue bloods, arguably, but you would have thought that USC would have been a little bit easier for him just because the talent right there around him versus Oklahoma. Anyway, it was
Yeah.
interesting. I thought it was a good game, though.
Yeah, well, I thought USC just straight up stole Michigan's playbook. I mean, they were ground and
Yep.
pound, wear you down in the trenches, make you quit by the 4th quarter. Just ran the ball super effectively, 224 yards, and they had some long runs too. Runs of 49, 47, and 29 yards. Just gashed, as you said, the number 7 ranked defense in that area. Made it look easy. They had 7.2 yards per play. Michigan has not allowed that many yards per play since their loss to Georgia in 2021 in the playoffs. And yeah, I mean, Michigan, if they're down multiple scores, they can't really play that game. They
Yeah,
can't
right.
really play that game right now.
Their life cycle is not there yet.
Yeah, it should be noted that Michigan's running back got hurt in the first half, and he's been really, really good for them all season. But that's not like the reason they lost this game because they were really getting beat the same way in the first half. USC is an interesting position because the Big Ten could get a fourth team in the playoff. It would make sense for them to do so. Is USC, are they going to be that fourth team? Because here's the deal: no matter what happens against Notre Dame, they can kind of afford to lose that because Notre Dame, remember, they're in a must-win spot. Notre Dame is. They can't lose another game. It's at Notre Dame. USC still faces Oregon after this. If they
Mm-hmm.
want to get in, they got to win one of those two games, I would think. So yeah, it's very interesting. USC needed a win like this.
Oh,
They
for sure.
got it. Now keep in
Especially after the
mind,
emotional loss they had last week against Illinois.
right, right. And keep in mind, this was a tough spot for Michigan. I will say these Big Ten teams have been complaining about the travel of going from, Michigan to California. And USC was off a bye week. That really does help them. But still, they got it done. They haven't been able to get it done to this point. I'm excited for USC to potentially be good because it's good for college football.
Oh yeah.
And if they pull out a win this weekend, they're gonna start really being talked about again, like
Oh,
on
for
a
sure.
national stage, like top 10 level. Do I think they're ready for that? I don't, but we'll see.
The
So
Notre
yeah,
Dame game will be a great test.
yeah,
Like we said, not too concerned about how their offense will do. I think they'll, I think their team is largely carried by their offense. Um, how will their defense do against like a honestly CJ Carr's doing really good. Jeremiah Love, we all know what he can do. Really, Notre Dame is like a really good balanced offense. So it'll be
no one
interesting.
has stopped their offense. So it's gonna be very, very interesting.
Yes,
Um,
it
could be a shootout type game.
yeah, it very well could be. USC, their next couple games, like you said, at Notre Dame, very interesting. And then at Nebraska, that could be very interesting too. If they win both of those
Yeah,
games, man, I think for sure. Hey, I mean, you got to put them in the top 10, I would think. Um, man, and just they got that Oregon game. Okay, in the Iowa game, it could be sneaky, but hmm,
yeah,
these
yeah.
next 2 weeks will be very telling for USC, in my opinion.
Agreed.
That's for most teams.
One more point on this game and on Michigan in general. I'm seeing some comments from the fan base, and look, their fan base knows Michigan more than I do, but some comments about wanting to get rid of their head coach and how, they haven't looked great the past couple years. And it kind of goes back to what we've been saying, about, James Franklin or just coaches in general, getting rid of them too quickly. I it's look, I get it because I'm the same way with A&M. When A&M is performing bad, I'm like, well, maybe the coaches they need a change, and that's how we all are. But you can't do that with Michigan. You got to look at their situation and just say, like, look, they've got a young quarterback, got a lot of potential. The last thing you want to do is mess up his development. Give him, give them more time, in my opinion. Uh,
This is his
so
second year.
right,
They have been super spoiled with Jim Harbaugh.
right.
Arguably, I mean, when he was still at Michigan, Nick Saban. I mean, you could probably put him top three, top four coach in all of college football. And he, and man, I just respect him a lot. Number one, just because of the principles that he has. And interesting little side fact, he like gave out cards to some announcers or whatever that he has for the program, and they're awesome. But great person. Everywhere he's been, no matter what, NFL, NCAA, he improves them drastically. And I remember, when we were very young, when he was at Stanford, I remember watching Stanford every weekend because I just loved Andrew Luck, Toby Gerhart, all them guys. Okay. Um, Frankly, it's almost kind of like it reminds me a little bit just talking about it. Like when Mac Brown for Texas kind of started to suck after all those years of him like being very good and dominant in the sport, we just wanted to cut him off within a couple years. I know it's a little different, but Sharon Moore, I mean, Jim Harbaugh leaves. He takes over the year after they win the championship. And that year that Jim Harbaugh won the championship with Michigan, they had a lot of great guys that were not top talents out of high school, but they were a very mature team. A lot of them graduated. So what did that make Sharon Moore do? And basically he inherited like a less battle tested team, which yes, they started out slow, but then they came on pretty late. And I think they went 8-5, and I think they was last year the year they beat Alabama in the bowl game. I think it was. And I'm not going to sit here and say, man, that's like a top five win in program history, but that was really good for them, considering the difference between the two as far as talent and life cycle maybe of the teams. And this year, I mean, what they're 5-2. Lost to Oklahoma, which I still think is a very good quality opponent. And then USC. I mean, like I said, USC we'll see in a couple weeks, but Sherman Moore very good. Don't forget how Michigan was too prior to Jim Harbaugh getting there. It was almost like a coach carousel too. You know,
Yeah. No, agreed on that. And now I will say those voices are only going to get louder if Michigan doesn't handle their business this year because they face Washington this week.
that can be a
That's not
sticky
an
one
easy
too.
game.
Yeah, they were very competitive with Ohio State till about the third quarter. So
Right, right. So interesting to see what Michigan and USC do from here on out. One more game that I think we want to cover a little bit more in depth before we just kind of sprinkle some thoughts on the other games. And to be honest, I don't even have that much to say about this game, although it was interesting. Georgia Auburn. Here's the thing, and you're gonna get this more. You're gonna understand this more as a Texas fan. I know you understand it. You think you understand it now, but going into these SEC environments on the road at night is a different animal. And it's too bad Auburn doesn't have and hasn't had better teams because that environment at night is a top 3 spot in the SEC, top 5
maybe
spot in
even
the
the
entire
country.
country.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. They it really is too bad. And their defense is legit. Again, coming off a bye, tough spot for Georgia to just go in there and roll. Uh, the main thing people have kind of been talking about is the officiating in this game, and rightfully so. Like a lot of it was bad, and it is too bad because Auburn was dominating Georgia the entire first half, and then you had that fumble right there at the goal line. Here's what I would say: just hold on to the freaking ball. You hold on to the ball, and you probably win that game, and you're up 17-0. Instead, after that, the game completely changed. I mean, it was 235 total yards for Auburn to 20 in the first half, up until Georgia getting the ball, I think, after that fumble. And the game just changed. A credit to Georgia for like never panicking, always being in the game if they're behind. They did the same thing a couple weeks ago against Tennessee. For Auburn, I don't know where they go as a program from here. Look, they have a tough schedule this year, but Jackson Arnold is good at what he does, but he's not a guy that's gonna like propel you and do anything special because he just can't pass the ball that well. Um, I give credit to Georgia for winning in that environment. Not easy. There's a reason that spread was so low. We were questioning like, why is it 3.5? Well, because it's a tough place to play, and it is a rivalry game. So I give credit to Georgia for pulling it out. But I will say they're kind of being exposed as a somewhat vulnerable team. they're not, the elite Georgia they have been.
Mhm.
So, look, with that coaching staff, they could always figure it out. Like, it wouldn't shock me if they make a deep playoff run. Of course not. Um, but they're not perfect. They're not perfect at all. Like, would it shock me if they missed the playoffs this year? It actually would not. Like, I could see them losing a couple more games. Like, I could
Talking
see it.
about the next couple games, but for USC, Georgia plays Ole Miss next.
That's right. That's
Uh,
right.
at
So,
least it's home, but man, that'll be a tough test because man, Georgia good defense, not in question about that necessarily, but can their offense really compete with a high powered offense from another team? We're going to get that test this weekend, okay? And like I said, Ole Miss kind of had an off week. For whatever reason, I think majority of college football teams will have that, and I think that's just what Ole Miss had. Um, I don't think any less of them for that. They were able to, regardless of coming out slow, they were still able to pull off the win. Um, basically, Auburn Georgia game. I think it was funny, and it's kind of hilarious, honestly. Nick Saban calling Auburn's field haunted. So funny. Really and
yeah,
truly. But the
I
more
mean,
you
it's
think
a
about it,
crazy
it's like,
place to play.
dang, yeah, exactly. It's like, dude, I can't remember. Was it last year or the year before that the grave digger play happened or whatever, where Jalen Milrow chucked it up? They caught it in the corner on the very last play. It was like 4th and 30. Can't remember if
Yeah,
that was last
yeah.
year or the year before, but
I don't remember either. I think it was
there
2 years
is,
ago.
yeah. Anyway, like some of the best plays of college football in recent history have happened there.
Yeah.
And I think Auburn is an interesting team. Like, listen, I don't think it. I think it's a good job. I think it's a little interest. I would have figured by now Hugh Freeze, if anything, we would have had a great offense and maybe a troublesome defense. That part be the thing that's holding them back. But it's kind of the opposite. Kind of odd. Um, I think Jackson Arnold, and it's so weird. I think he was like the second or third best quarterback in the nation when he came out of high school in, I forgot, was it 2023 maybe? He couldn't really do anything at OU. Now he's basically coming here doing the same thing running. Okay. I think Auburn is just so one dimensional. And honestly, it really sucks because Cam Coleman out there, man, I think he's going to be a round one draft pick whenever his time comes. He is fantastic. He's
Yep.
great. It just sucks that he doesn't have a quarterback that can really throw it to him, because if he did, I think Auburn could really be making a play for like maybe above like middle tier team, and which is still very good, by the way, in the SEC. Um, I think I'll touch on what you said about the coaching for Georgia. Elite coaching can get you a lot of places, and you're right. Georgia's vulnerable. Their elite coaching, though, is what's keeping them in. Be interested to see how Georgia does against Ole Miss. And this was a dangerous game, I think, too, for Auburn. Yes, they were coming off a bye week, but how easy would it be for them to look past this game and look at that Ole Miss game? And
Yes.
Ole Miss excuse me, Auburn has enough firepower to get past you on any given Saturday.
Are you talking about you mean Georgia has enough firepower? You said Auburn. But I think I know what you meant. I think you meant Georgia could have looked past Auburn because of
Yes,
Ole
and
Miss. Yes.
Georgia has enough. Yes, and Auburn has enough firepower. If they were clicking on all three cylinders and
Okay,
Georgia
yeah.
overlooked them, then
Yeah.
yes,
Okay,
Auburn,
yeah.
Auburn,
100%.
yeah, Auburn could have handled that to them. So I think this was a difficult game for Georgia. So kudos to them for not looking past this and winning.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, listen. So those were like kind of the main games, but there's still like a lot of other games to talk about. Uh, General thoughts. Where do you want to go? What game do you want to talk about?
I thought it was interesting that the Arkansas Tennessee game turned out the way it did. That's another great rivalry game. Bobby Petrino's first game as the interim head coach. So I forgot what show. I don't know what show it's what the name of the show is, but he was like, if you What do you think Bobby Petrino's response would be if you asked him if he was coach or interim coach? It was like he would say, "I'm coach." Anyway, I don't know why it was hilarious. No, but past couple weeks we've been talking about Arkansas having a really great or pretty good offense. Their defense is what holds them back, and I think you could almost say the same thing in regards to Tennessee. Their defense is just slightly better than Arkansas's, and their offense is still really good, as it pretty much has been the entire time Josh Heupel has been there. But I thought it was a good showing for Arkansas, just because how easy would it have been for them to just lay an egg this game? Tennessee's a really good opponent. Arkansas, not to necessarily say they had like top tier expectations by any means, but how easy would it be for them to just crumble? Their coach got fired, which I'm sure a lot of them playing love Sam Pittman. He just seemed like he'd be a great coach for the locker room, and I don't know. I have to give them kudos for showing up and being very competitive all till the end.
I agree. Arkansas is gonna have a big upset this year. They're going to. I don't know who it's gonna be against, but their offense can score on anybody. The big problem, obviously, is their defense. I was looking at their stats. Literally every stat you look at defensively, it's like 115th in the nation. They're just horrible. Their offense is a top 25 offense, top 15 offense in just about every category. Look, they face A&M this week, and trust me, I'm afraid because
Well,
look,
yeah,
it's
it's
a
a rivalry
legitimate
game.
team. What's a
Yeah,
rivalry, but it's a team that again they can outscore. They're gonna be in just about every game they play because they can score.
if
They
they're
just make
effective
so
against
many
your guys'
mistakes.
defense, it can be a little dangerous for putting it onto Marcel Reed's shoulders. And you guys, in I mean, hey, I mean, who wouldn't? Because you have those two bell cows on your backfield. But man, it'll be interesting to see like how your defense does against them. And y'all's defense is really good too. But it'll be interesting to see like if they put it all on Marcel Reed, how he'll respond.
Well, look, I don't want to talk about the A&M angle just yet because we have obviously the preview show. We can talk about it, but just quickly, uh,
Yeah.
A&M lost their running back, uh, and that really affected their season last season. They didn't lose him for the year, but he's done for a significant amount of time, and that does affect things. But um, I don't want to get off topic here, talk about A&M, but yeah, I agree. Arkansas, like they covered that. I thought that spread was too big. 12 and a half it was at one point. And, they made it a 3-point game. So yeah, Tennessee's a weird team.
Yeah.
They're kind of similar to Arkansas in the sense that they score a lot and they allow a lot of points.
Exactly.
Um, look, they've got Alabama this week. That'll be very fascinating. And Tennessee could have overlooked Arkansas as well. A lot of teams were in spots where they could have overlooked their opponent. So credit to Tennessee. I do want to move on to the team that I think is the luckiest. Their head coach is the luckiest coach in the nation right now because there's been so many big games happening the past couple weeks that no one's talking about this guy, and that is Mike Norvell in Florida State. Not a lot of people talking about this game. Florida State lost again. So they had kind of an outlier win against Alabama. They
Hmm.
won. They sucked last year, and they're 3-3 this year. I happened to watch the whole game, and it was actually a good game to watch. And they lost to Pitt. Pitt just went down the field on them, scored on them like every time. Um,
34-31, if I'm not mistaken, right?
yes, it was 34-31,
Pitt is
and
always one of those teams too. Not like I'm defending Florida State, but they're always one of those teams too, regardless of their schedule. They always take I think, a pretty good team toe to toe at least once during the year.
agreed, agreed. But again, yeah, it's not just that they lost to Pitt; it's
Well,
that they've
exactly.
now lost 3 in a row. And
They're
by the
three.
way, they
Yeah,
were
they're
at
three
home.
and three, right? Yeah, I
Right.
think they're 3
10
and 3.
point favorites. 10-point
Yeah.
favorites. So now at this point, we're talking about another guy getting fired, but look, he had that's what's so crazy is he 3 years ago, he
Hmm.
was so good. Um, and then
Especially at a place
last
like Florida
year,
State too.
yeah, yeah. So it's like it is a weird situation because I do hate to get rid of guys too early, but my God, like they
Well,
just
and since Jimbo left, where has Florida State really been? Honestly, they've been a coaching carousel too until Mike Norvell showed up, and it's at
yeah,
least given them a little bit of stability. Um,
yeah.
I hate that for him. It's just very odd, And honestly, last 5 years, Florida State, Florida. Um, you have to say Florida State has had more success, but yet Florida has probably out recruited them. You could say in Miami. I mean, Miami's out recruited both of them probably the last 5 years, but there's a huge difference between Florida State's recruiting classes and Florida's and Miami's. And, Mike Norvell, he had a great year, 13, hold on, 13-1, I guess, is what that
Yep.
season was when he got really, when they, I'm not saying they got blown out by Georgia. Not saying that like a lot of players left, whatever, and declare for the draft and whatnot. So I'm not saying that in a bad way, but, um, I don't know. It's just he's had success. He's just not getting the recruits there that he needs. It's odd,
I
odd
I guess,
situation.
but you just said they've had more success than Florida, and that's true. But Florida's in a tougher conference. Florida State has been in one of the softer
Well, that's
conferences.
okay. Yes, very true. In the last 2 years, Florida has probably top five, probably a little bit higher, but top five hardest schedule in the college football.
Right, right. 385 days as of Saturday since Florida State had won an ACC game. So that's a problem. That's a problem. Curious
All
to see
things
what happens
considered,
there.
there's arguably like what, maybe 2 to 3 teams in the ACC that is they would say, okay, I could, that's a good team or whatever.
Right, right. This coaching carousel this year is going to be crazy because who
I
knows? I
think
mean, I
so.
don't know what Florida's going to do. I don't know what Florida State's going to do, but some of these jobs are going to be open.
I forgot
So,
to mention this when we were talking about the James Franklin fiasco. So interesting. Matt Rule, and I didn't even realize this till today. I didn't know this. Penn State alumni.
yes, he has already been asked about it, and look, coaches are going to say
Oh
what they're
yeah,
going
and
to say.
I saw his
Yeah,
response, but I find it hard to think. Okay, you have a sentimental spot for where you went to school at.
sure.
And
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, I don't think that it's like fake of him to potentially, if you like, let's say theoretically he leaves to go to Penn State. Okay, I think he's bought in to Nebraska. I think Penn State is probably the only school that could get him away from Nebraska because really and truly, Nebraska is also, I think, a sleeping giant. Before our time, Nebraska was a big dog in college football, honestly. And they just kind of, maybe since 2010, 12, 13, whatever, they've just really sucked and probably had the worst period in their history. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see who gets that Penn State job. Also, I think the Arkansas can be an interesting job to see who gets that too, because I think it's kind of maybe a redemption spot or a prove it spot. Kind of I know that redemption and prove it kind of mean the same thing. Maybe somebody that is like a coordinator gets that head coaching job, say, hey, go prove it, guy, or a redemption, hey, man, you underperformed at your last spot, come redeem yourself here, kind of thing.
If you were Penn State, would you want Matt Rule? I wouldn't.
I think so.
Yeah, I
I think
disagree. I don't think he's that
really.
impressive. I don't think he's that impressive at all. I think I'm not saying that he sucks, but, like, if I'm Penn State, I want, like, a top guy. Like, I don't know how many top guys are gonna be available, but to me, Matt Rule is just, like, an okay coach. Like, I don't know. I just don't see it.
So what was he at? He was at
What has he done
Temple.
at Nebraska? He's having a pretty good year this year.
Yeah,
Credit to him
I
for this,
know.
but
What's his third year?
yes, in 2023 is when he was hired, so this is his 3rd year.
So Temple,
He is building the team.
he is. Keep in mind too, like there's an argument. Okay, is this the easiest time to build or the hardest time to build a team right now because of NIL? Let's just say 50-50, whatever. Um, For a long time, Nebraska, like 10, 15 years, they have just been kind of a joke. Regardless of the coach, probably going to be a 2 to 3 year journey for them to be a serious contender. I'm not going to sit here and say Nebraska is a serious contender by any means, but they are so much better than they were 3 years ago before Matt Rule got there. Previously, I know Matt Rule got fired from Carolina in the middle of the season in NFL. But before that, he did really well at Baylor, led them to 11-win year. Okay, the first time that had happened since Art Briles. Okay, and then before that, he was at Temple and led them, I think, maybe to one or two 10-win seasons, which that's pretty good too. So Matt Rule, up to this point, pretty much everywhere he's been, other than the NFL, um, he's turned the program around. He just hasn't stayed there long enough to sustain it per se. And maybe that's the question. Like, okay, where can he get us to? Where or how long can he keep us here? Maybe that's the question. But I think he's a good coach, and I don't know. I don't know if Matt Rule played football at Penn State or what his deal is there, but I don't know. It's a unique spot, good talent. It's just kind of
Yeah,
yeah.
he
I don't
he
know.
was a
It's interesting.
linebacker there from '94 to '97.
Ah,
I'm looking through his resume right now. I agree with you that he's turned programs around, and it does seem like that is what he's doing at Nebraska. I would just say, not that it takes credit away, but he had one good year at Baylor.
yeah.
Okay, he had one good year. Now he did
And
it
after that, he left for Carolina, if I'm not
right, and
mistaken.
he sucked in the NFL. Whatever, fine. Um, Nebraska, he was okay. It looks like they're having a good year this year. His overall record, and again, this is kind of out of context, but in college, it's 64 and 57. Not impressive, but if you look at the teams he's done it with, and the trajectory of the programs went up when he was there. I get it. Um, I don't know. I wouldn't be that excited about him. Just my own opinion.
Well, I think the biggest thing is who can Penn State go and grab this year?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Gruden wants to get back into coaching, and I'm not joking. I'm not
Now
joking. I
that
think
would
they could do.
be now it trying to think, did he say he would want to coach there at some point recently? I saw some maybe it was Georgia actually that he said that about. Okay, I think it was Georgia, but dude, wouldn't that be insane if Gruden got into Penn State,
That
dude?
would be.
That would
That'd be
be
really cool.
insane.
Yeah. Urban Meyer.
Just
No,
imagine
that's
him being on college game day, just getting interviewed, man.
I know, I know. That would be awesome if it happened, but,
Imagine
um,
that sideline cam. You just need a camera just sitting on him the entire game.
yeah, for sure. Okay, other games, let's see, I thought there was a game. Oh, yeah, just quickly, so this game was, like, a lot like the, Georgia-Auburn game, but South Carolina LSU had the same score, 2010. Um, to me, this was about LSU just not being able to fire on all cylinders. They have a Nuss problem. He's just not the guy. I've seen enough. I've seen enough. I get that he might be injured, but these expectations of him being like a top 5 quarterback in the league, he's not. And they've got issues. They've got issues offensively. They kind of remind me of when A&M is struggling. They I don't know how they're going to finish. They've got A&M on their schedule, they've got Alabama on their schedule, they've got OU on their schedule. That's tough, and they just look incomplete to me. And that South Carolina team, I'm sorry, is not very good. Like, that's a bad team this year, South Carolina. So I think LSU has some serious issues. They pulled away in this game, like in the fourth quarter, but I mean, they tried to lose it all throughout, and South Carolina just couldn't do it. And LSU's defense is legit; they have a good defense. Um, I don't think there's anything LSU can really do different. Is the thing offensively? There's nothing they can change unless they made like a quarterback change, and they're not going to do that. I'm not saying they should. Um, so yeah, LSU, they're number 11 right now. I could see this team being unranked at the end of the year. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much else to say to that, but who would have thunk that LSU's defense would be the one to kind of keep them in the game versus their offense? Because last year was all about their offense. Um, and man, coming into the year, I was very high on Nussmeyer, and now it's kind of like, Like, would I want somebody else in there? Yeah, very strange. Not to the same level, but it's just almost like it's almost kind of like the expectation versus the reality of Clemson and LSU. Like it's just like I was very high on LSU and Clemson. I know LSU is not like by any means like lost like Clemson has, which now Clemson's 3-3 and what LSU's 5-1 or whatever. But um, I don't know, man. There's just something about LSU. They're not complete. The year the defense finally shores up, it's the freaking offense now that's the problem. And there was some speculation. They not to keep bringing this up. Brian Kelly was a name that they put into the hat for the Penn State uh, coaching job as well. But I was thinking about that LSU. That's like arguably a top three job in the nation.
No shot. Yeah, no shot he's leaving.
I mean, you'd be crazy. I mean, and honestly, I'm very shocked because very much like Matt Rule, even more so, every place Brian Kelly has been at, he's had major success. Cincinnati. Has Cincinnati ever been top three before? Well, guess what? They were when he was there. Notre Dame, yes, very like historical place by any means, but he brought them back to a national championship. However, they did lose pretty badly, but he kept them in the game. Okay. Well, he kept them relevant. Okay. Consistently. And honestly, this is probably the easiest job as far as recruiting power goes. Probably the easiest gig for him. Um, I find it surprising that he just hasn't built a more complete team. Anyway, not much else to say. And South Carolina, very interesting too. They're a team with a lot of expectations. Haven't really put it all together. Injuries, yada yada yada. The list goes on. Their team, I think, if they all showed up and started firing on all cylinders, they can beat anybody. They have good talent, but will they? That's the question. Um, LSU, like you said, 11, but I could easily see them going unranked, especially with their upcoming schedule. They got Vanderbilt next week, which that could be a sneaky game, actually. Oh, dude,
Yeah.
their next three games are pretty rough.
Yeah. No, it
Vander,
is. It
Van-
is.
man, that might even rival Oklahoma, bro.
I think
Vanderbilt,
Vanderbilt's favored, by the way.
let me click.
I could be wrong on that.
Well, as far no, I think you're actually right. I think Vanderbilt's 2.5 point
Yep.
favorite.
Yep.
60.8% people vote for them. Listen, I mean, man,
That's gonna be a great game.
I think so too. I wonder what kind of conversations Brian Kelly would be having if he were to lose all three of those. Do I think that will happen? I don't know. I think he could very easily, man. I could think he could be 1-2 in those three games. Okay, his best shot in those three games is Vanderbilt. I hate to say it, I like Vanderbilt, but LSU, A&M, I think that could be a good game. I think that has the making for like a very ugly defensive game and maybe a field goal, kind of like the Texas OU game. A field goal is really 7 points in the game. Alabama, I think they're just going to roll them. I mean, that's a rivalry game, of course, so I won't necessarily, we'll talk about that preview week or whatever. But anyway, we'll see how Brian Kelly does. It'll be interesting. Did you have any other games you wanted to talk about? Or
Not really. I'm fine to do a quick look at the AP poll, if you
yeah,
are. Okay. I
yep,
know we're getting close to your bedtime here.
yes.
Um,
The lights will cut off soon.
so AP poll, honestly, again, I'm good with it. We have 6 new people. I'm sorry, 5 new people, 5 new teams in the AP poll. Again, I don't know if I would have dropped Illinois out.
Yeah,
Credit to BYU. I fell asleep at the very end. They pulled out a victory against Arizona when they were down. I still think they're the most overrated team in the nation. They face Utah this week. That'll be a fun one. The Holy
yeah.
War. Um, but other than BYU being number 15, I'm cool with all these rankings. Um, LSU,
I
I
think
think
we
it's
were saying
fine.
I think we were saying LSU was 11, but they're 10. So
They're 10, yeah.
I saw
Um,
somebody say LSU was the worst team in the top 10. I think I would have to agree with that. Which I
yeah, I
mean, no
mean,
crap. I mean, they're ranked number 10, but I mean, aside the point, because sometimes some 10th ranked teams are pretty good and whatever. Anyway, yeah, I would agree
yeah.
with you, honestly. By the way, I would briefly like to say that Nebraska had a pretty good win against Maryland, which I now think Maryland's
Mhm.
what 4-2 or something like that. So Nebraska's putting together like a good season. We talked about Matt Rule a little bit, but yeah, and honestly, Georgia Tech at 12, Notre Dame at 13, very interesting. Oklahoma's at 14. Yeah, I like it. Um,
I'd be ready for OU to tumble.
yeah,
I think that they may lose this week against South Carolina. South Carolina's been
they could
desperate
if
for a
they're not
win.
careful. They're not. Yeah, they could. I mean, it's
Yeah,
because think about it. Because I mean, at this point now, Shane Beamer just is. He's clawing and fighting to at least have something to say. Hey, I've proved it to you that I deserve to be here still.
yep, for
So
sure.
anyway, but yeah, a very interesting week of football. Can't wait to do a preview and kind of talk about the upcoming games. It would be very hard to top this past weekend, though. We were really blessed with that for sure.
Agreed. All right, let's wrap it up. This has been another episode of Blown Coverage. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.
All right, see you later.